Hello, I'm Helen Bradley and welcome to this video tutorial, and today we're going to look at using text in Illustrator. And we're going to start this from the very beginning. I'm just going to create a regular new document. It doesn't matter what document size you're using. So I'm just going to click Create New. And of course, if you're using an older version of Illustrator, you'll just create a new file the way you do in that version. Now we're going to the text tool here. There are a lot of tools here with the text tool. There is the regular text tool, which is the type tool, which we're going to be using, area type, and then various other ones like type on a path and touch type. And we're going to look at a few of those in this video, but we're going to start with the type tool because that's what you're going to start with most of the time. So right now my point size is really small, so I'm just going to click in the box and shift up arrow to increase the size of the font. Now you can also do it by clicking this drop down list, but there's a limited number of font sizes and I want to be way above that. So I'll either type it in myself or use that shift up arrow trick, or you can click here to just increase it, but that's a slow way of doing it. So I'm going to click once in the document. I have black type selected. I'm just going to type ABC. And the font I'm using right now is called Myriad Pro. I'm just going to click on the type and let's just move it out of the way. So that's how you create what's called line type. It's sort of like a single line of type, and that's the best option for creating it. You just go to the type tool, click once in the document and type. Going to the selection tool to stop typing. I'm just going to delete that because there's a second way of creating type, and this is ideal for longer pieces of type. Again, go to the type tool, and of course I could be pressing the letter T to enable that tool. And instead of just clicking, this time I'm going to click and drag. And what I'm doing is creating a box into which my type can go. Now my type is going to be way too big, so let's just make it a bit smaller. So when you're creating sentences or paragraphs of type, it's better to use these area type tools. So you're going to click on the type tool, drag out your box, and then type inside it. Now, these two options do differ slightly. So let's grab the paragraph of text and let's just shrink up this box. And you'll see that the box just gets smaller. Now, if I make the box really too small for the type that is overflowed disappears. But there's a little red indicator here telling me that I've got type in the box that's not showing. And so I can just enlarge the box and see the type. Typically, you want to keep your box fairly close around the edge of your type, but adjusting the size of the box reflows the type inside the box. Now, adjusting the size of this does something completely different. It just stretches the type. So it's a totally different approach to take. If you really want to size this type and keep its proportions, hold the Shift key and drag on one of these outer corners, and that just sizes up the type. You'll see that the point size actually changes when you do that, but you haven't destroyed the sort of nature of the type. You haven't stretched it out of proportion. So when we come to resizing our type, we can just click on the type box, click here in the font size, and just increase the type. And we can do a similar thing with this area type. Select the area type, click in the font size box, and just increase or decrease the font size. Now, so far as selecting a font to use with the type selected, you can choose an alternative font. So I'm just going to drop this list down. And as I roll over each typeface, you'll see that the type that I've got typed in my document changes. Now I can also use the down arrow key and the up arrow key to scroll through these typefaces. And I'm looking for something that I would want to use. So let's just go for this font face here, and it's Blessings Through Raindrops. The problem is if I press enter right now, all I'm going to be doing is confirming that I want to use Myriad Pro. You can see up here Myriad Pro is the current typeface. So once you find the typeface you want to use, you actually have to click it with the mouse, and that will set it as your typeface. A similar thing happens when you select this area text. You're just going to select the box here, and then you can scroll down the various fonts to find something that you want to use for your type. As soon as you do, whether you use the arrow key or the mouse to do the scrolling, you'll want to click on that font with the mouse so that you actually select it as being the font to use for that text. Now, certain fonts actually travel as families. So if we open the font list here, you'll see some of them have this little arrow beside them. And if you click that, you can open this disclosure triangle. It shows you what other forms of this typeface are available. So many of them will have, say, a regular and a bold, and some of them will have a lot more. Arial has quite a few here, sort of black and bold and narrow bold, italic, and so on. But you'll find that sometimes it's really handy to see that these fonts do come in families, because you might want a single font to use in a document, but there are different variations of it. And so if a font doesn't have a bold face available for it, then you just won't be able to make it bold easily in Illustrator, and it won't look as good as a font family that actually does come with a bold version. Now, for any of these fonts that do come as families, such as Arial, if I click on Arial here, I'm just using Arial Regular, but there's a style box here that reflects all of those variations of Arial that we actually saw in the font list here. So what you can do is just go and select Arial Bold. So once you made a decision of Arial, if there are any styles in that font family, they will appear in this list, and they're selectable here. And the same goes for Area Type. Now let's have a look at the Touch Type tool, and that is used with this sort of single line type. So with the type selected, I'm going to grab hold of the Touch Type tool. And now when I select on the type, I can select on individual characters, and I can move them, and I can reshape them. Moving the first letter doesn't have much effect because you're actually just moving the entire piece of type. But if you go and grab the second letter and move it, then it pushes all the other letters further along. And it can be moved up or down. So you can get this sort of bounce lettering style if you like. You can also adjust the size of the letters. So this handle here makes the letters wider, and this makes them bigger or smaller. And then there's this one which makes them taller or shorter, and this one is the move handle. You can also rotate your text. So this is a way of building up interesting text effects, but maintaining the editability of the text. So these characters can be altered if you need to or want to. So I could select this character here with just the regular type tool. Let me just grab it and make it a capital D. And the look of the type, courtesy of the Touch Type tool, has been pretty much maintained. You will probably want to make some minor changes having done that, but it is still editable type. And that's done with the Touch Type tool. Now, not all versions of Illustrator have that. It was just introduced fairly recently. So if you don't have it, it will be available in a later version of Illustrator. Now I've created some additional text here because I want to look at the concept of coloring your text. Now you can just select over your text and just recolor it. So let's just choose a different color, a red for now. When I click away, the text is a different color. You can also add strokes to your text. So let's go and create a sort of blue stroke, and let's increase the stroke weight up here. And so we're able to add a stroke to our text. But if we make our stroke too big, it starts to be apparent that this stroke is eating away into the text. Now, sometimes that's an effect that you want, sometimes it's not. And if that's not the effect that you want, then you're about to learn something special about styling text in Illustrator. Now, I'm going to get the appearance panel. So I've got mine over here. It's a circle with a series of dots around it. You can, of course, get to it by choosing Window and then Appearance. Now when I open the appearance panel, you'll see that I can't even see a fill and a stroke. But if I had a shape here that had these same things applied to it, when I go to the appearance panel, I can see a stroke and a fill. So what's happening is that text is being treated a little bit differently by Illustrator. So that's the first thing to notice. The second thing to notice is if I double click on characters here, then I do have a stroke and a fill. So the stroke and fill are being applied to the individual characters, not to the typeface itself. Now that brings up something really interesting. I'm going to just turn my stroke off for now because that's a little bit in the way. I'm going to, with the type tool, select over a single character. Now I've got some nice colors here. Let's just make sure that it's going to the fill and not the stroke. And let's apply some different colors to our type. So if you want a multicolor text effect so that every character was a different color, You would select the text, double click characters here in the appearance panel, and that gives you access to coloring individual characters. Now it also works on words. So if I want to select the word quick here, here is the characters area of the appearance panel. So I'm just going to make this word a different color. So you can use that effect to recolor individual words or individual characters. But let's revisit this color situation. So I'm just going to pop this text out of the way and let's create some new text to work with. Earlier we saw the problem when we created a fill and a stroke on our text, that the stroke was starting to eat away into the fill. So let's just add a thicker stroke around our text, and let's go and choose a different font to use as well. This is a good one to use because there are a few things going on here. So firstly, our stroke has eaten up our text. Now, if we don't want that to happen, what we're going to do is we're actually going to turn off the stroke and turn off the fill. And we're going back to the appearance panel to the type area. Now, we've been working in the characters area up to now. What we've done is to remove anything that's been applied through the characters area. So we're going to the type area now, and we're going to click here once, and that adds a new stroke and also adds a new fill. So now we're back to stroke and fill, and they sort of look the same, but they're going to behave really, really differently. So let's go and get some colors to use. So I'm going to create this sort of peach colored stroke around our type, and I'm going to select our fill, which is that sort of greeny blue. And of course we can't see the fill because it's being eaten up by that stroke, but this font is actually really, really nice. So one of the solutions that we can apply to this, just want to see these spikes so that we can see the problem in a minute and fix that up as well. So how we can fix the problem of the stroke eating up the text is to grab this stroke and move it underneath the fill. Now you can't do that in the characters panel. You can't move a stroke underneath a fill, but you can in this type panel. So these are stacked. So the stroke is now underneath the fill, and we're seeing the fill on this really nice piece of type. This is what the type actually looks like. It's really pretty. And so we've got a stroke behind it now. Now what I'm looking at also is these little pointy bits that seem to be appearing above the type, and that's caused by this stroke. So I'm going to open up the stroke panel, and it's these corners that are causing issues. So if I change the corner style to round or this sort of bevel join, then I'm going to lose that problem with the stroke being really pointy, and that will quite often happen when you have quite a large stroke. So I'm actually going to leave this as a bevel join. So it's important to understand the difference between formatting an object and formatting type. With type, you do have this characters area, and unless you just want a simple color and a really narrow stroke, then you'll probably want to remove everything from the characters area, just set it to no fill, no stroke, come to the type area, and then apply your appearances this way, because you get much more interesting, much more varied appearances, and you get a whole lot more control over your type. Let's have a brief look at the vertical type tool. I'm going to select it and click in my document where I want the top part of my type to appear. Now I've got a really large font here, so I'm just going to size that down a little bit, and I'm going to type the word cinema. Similarly, you can select over the type and you can select an alternate font to use. So just going to locate a font and click. So this is going to work pretty much the same in terms of formatting as the horizontal type tool. So I'm just going to tuck the vertical type out of the way because it's time to have a look at type on a path. Now I'm going to create an ellipse for this, a circle, by holding the Shift key down as I drag out an ellipse. I'm going to invert this so it has a stroke and no fill. The stroke is just going to help me see where I am. I'm going to the type on a path tool, and I'm going to click here on the path. And this type on a path tool has an I-beam and a little squiggle through it, and that's telling you that this is a special tool and you need to click on a path to use it. Now, again, my font size is pretty big for this purpose, so I'm going to make it a bit smaller, and I'm going to type my type. When I select on my type with the selection tool, you'll see that there are a couple of markers here and there's a marker over here. Let's have a look at this marker first. If I hover over it, you'll see that my mouse pointer changes at some point to have a little bar and an arrow underneath it, just to the bottom right of it. So I'm going to click on that and drag it, and that allows me to flip my text over the circle, and I can flip it over and back, and I can move it at the same time because I'm sort of moving the center point of the text as I'm working. So that allows you to flip the text. Now there are a couple of indicators up here too, a little bit hard to see right now because I flipped my text over, but they also have that little icon in the bottom corner, and you're looking to pick up that icon. Don't move it or select it until you actually see the indicator that you're looking for. And I'm losing it here now. Let me just go and get the direct selection tool, and I'm seeing it now because it turns to a black arrow as soon as I've got the mouse hovering over that little indicator. So what I can do is just use it to move my text around. So there'll be one for the beginning of the text and one for the end of the text. So you can just look out for those little indicators here. The one for the end of the text is actually here, and we can see it because it's got this little red marker on it, and we already know from over here that the red marker means that there's text here that is not showing. So I'm just going to hover over it until I get that black mouse pointer with the arrow, and then I can just drag this around to find the rest of the text. And if I want to even it up here, I can just pull this one around. So let me just look for that indicator. It's being a little bit jumpy this morning. It's usually easier to find than this. There are also some options you can use with this Type on a Path tool. You select Type and then go to Type on a Path and click the Type on a Path options. Apart from having different ways that the text can be shown, let me just turn preview on so you can see the different options. There is also the option here to just go and select regular rainbow text and then flip it, and that will flip it over the path. So if you have difficulty finding this indicator that's the flip indicator, you can always come into Type on a Path options and find that there. It just makes it sometimes a little bit easier. You also have the option to align path to the ascender or the descender on the font and to the center, so the text is actually over the very center of the path, or as we were using, baseline. So I'm just going to click OK. Now, when you create Type on a Path like this, what you're doing is you're sacrificing your ellipse. So the ellipse has disappeared here. It's no longer visible. So even though we had a stroke on it, if we add a stroke right now, the stroke is going to be added to the text. It's not added to the ellipse because it's been sacrificed simply to create a path for your text. Now, you can also create text on a path that you've drawn with some other tool. So for example, the pencil tool can be used to create a path. Now, I've lost my path there, but it is there. We just can't see it. So I can pick it up with the Type on a Path tool. The same thing with text on a path like this. You've got all these little indicators that allow you to control the text. So I'm just going to pull this back so it can fit along the path. Now, there are also anchor points, of course, on this path. So let's just go and get one of the path anchor points. And if we change the path shape, then the text just reflows along the path. So the path is still there. It's just that it's there to provide a path along which the text can go. It's not there as a path that you would actually format and do something with. If you wanted to, you would need to make a duplicate of it and format it that way. The next type tool that we're going to look at is what's called the area type tool. Here it is in the tools panel. Now I have a circle created. It's just a regular circle. At the moment it has a white fill and a black stroke. With the area type tool, I can click on this path to select it, and now I can go ahead and type in this box. Now I actually have some text on the clipboard, so I'm just going to press Control or Command V to paste it in, but I could just as easily have typed the text. And the text is going to be filling the shape that I have selected. So I'm just going to increase my font size so that I can get my text to look a little bit better inside my shape. Now you can also use some of the alignment tools. Now the alignment tools can be used with pretty much any of the text tools, but it's particularly valuable for an effect like this. So with my shape selected, I'm going to the area type tool and I'm going to the paragraph options. And I can use an option such as justify all lines to justify the text within this shape. In fact, what might be better is justify with last line aligned center. And I'll click away from the shape with the selection tool. You can see that the text is now taking up the shape. If I decrease the size of the shape, then as we're used to seeing, we get this little red plus symbol here indicating to us that there is more text in this shape than is currently visible. So I'm just going to enlarge my shape and bring all the text back. So that's a handy way of filling a shape with text. Now you could use any of the shapes that you create in Illustrator, but you can also use all sorts of shapes that you create yourself. So you could put text in a question mark or in a flower shape, any of the shapes that you create in Illustrator. It just needs to be a non-compound, non-masking path. So you can't do it in a donut shape, for example, because that would be a compound path. But provided your path is not a compound path and it's not a masking path, then you're good to go. This has been a brief introduction to using the type tools in Illustrator, and I really hope that it's helped you get a grip on what kind of options are available to you. Please, if you enjoyed the video tutorial, would you give it a thumbs up, click the subscribe button and turn notifications on, and we'll let you know when new videos are released. Until next time, my name is Helen Bradley and thank you so much for joining me here on my YouTube channel.